Welcome back to Think Tech. I'm Jay Fidell. This is Talking Tax with Tom Yamachika, and we're going to talk about gadfly tax. We're going to talk about correcting problems in Hawaii state tax and fiscal policy. And we're going to talk about something we've talked about before, which is troubling. This is continued TANF hoarding, and that stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And if you thought that temporary assistance for needy families has to do with helping the poor, you were right. And we have a $378 million hoarding. And we need to talk about how that happened and how we're going to fix it. We'll be right back. Welcome to the show, Tom. It's nice to see you. And I am interested in this subject because I can't believe in a state where poverty is such a problem, homelessness is such a problem, we are again, may I say, repeated again, hoarding funds from the federal government. Can you talk about it?
Sure. Today we're going to be talking about TANF, which is the federal program called Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF for policy wonks. The program provides assistance for struggling families and children, but the thing about it is that the feds really don't do anything with it. They just give it to the states in the form of block grants. And it's up to the states then to, mail out the checks or otherwise use the money in a way that would help deal with the problem of poverty in our state.
What's the mechanism by which the feds assure themselves that this money is being appropriately distributed to the needy families?
Well, certainly we give them reports, and there's also a maintenance of effort requirement, so the state has to spend money also. And so let me show you what has been happening over the years. Let's pull up the graph called TANF funds used in Hawaii. So this is a graph of, and it's in millions of dollars, obviously, of federal and state funds that were actually spent as opposed to just given to us. There was a lot more given to us from the feds, as we will see, but this is what we actually spent. Now, the orange bars are what we've spent in state monies, and the blue bars are what we spent in federal monies. So we first pointed out this problem in 2020, 2021. No, 2022 is when we pointed it out, because these statistics are lagged 2 years, at which time we had about $350 million in what's called an unobligated balance. That is federal funds that are kind of sitting in a bank somewhere, waiting for us to draw them down and spend them for the good of the people.
What does obligated mean?
Obligated means that it's contracted to somebody, or it's been spent.
If it's just sitting in a bank, it's not obligated.
If it's just sitting in a bank, it's not obligated. That's right. And we've been looking at TANF financial data, and we see here that we've been spending lots of state money. In 2021, which is, I think, a year that we needed, I think, quite a bit more because of the pandemic, we actually wound up spending more federal money, which I think is good. We didn't spend all of the federal money that we were given, and we spent quite a bit less in state money. So like $20 million less in state money toward alleviating the poverty problem that we have here in Hawaii.
So let me understand better. So if we had the pandemic in 2021 and we had more money from the Fed, we did spend more money, but we spent less state money. Was that because we had less state money or some other reason?
That isn't clear at the moment. I mean, the data just shows that the spending went down. I'm not really sure why.
Okay.
But the part that I'm concerned about is this next graph, which shows the unobligated balance of TANF funds. So what we're showing here is the money that is basically in the bank and is not being used for anything. It was about 175 million in 2016, and it's grown over the last 5 years at least. It's taken a while to build up to that much money.
When we reported on this last year, it was 300 and what?
About 350. So
350. So now it's 378. We actually have a greater accumulation, a greater hoarding when we report it now. No?
Yeah, the slope is a little bit less, which means we added less to it than in previous years. But the problem is we're still adding to it.
And we're not spending it. We're not even spending the 350 million that we talked about a year ago. So let me try to do a sort of case study on this. Make me a bureaucrat for a minute, Tom. And I'm sitting at my desk, and my job is to obligate these funds. And so a message comes in, a secretary comes to my desk, and he or she says to me, "Look, we got more money from the Fed. Don't you want to obligate this?" What do I have to do as that bureaucrat to obligate this money and avoid just keeping it, in the bank?
Well, there are a couple of things you can do. One is you can kind of say, all right, department, can we distribute a whole bunch of checks to poor people to get rid of the surplus? This is what the tax department did last year. It was plastered in newspapers all over the state. Generated what we think was a tremendous amount of goodwill for the state. Why couldn't we do that for poor people? Okay.
Well, is it that we don't know who they are? Is it that there are no poor people or not as many poor people as before? That we can't seem to identify the recipients of funds for poor? What is the problem? I mean, I think if you were at that desk, or if I were at that desk, and it was a question of helping poor people and having $378 million in the bank to do so, I think we would do so. Why is it not being done? What is going on?
So let's turn to the counter argument for that first example. And so the counter argument is, well, look, Tom, you haven't identified all the poor people in this state because only 75 to 80% of them apply for TANF benefits. Okay, so if you give them a whole bunch of checks, we're gonna be missing lots of people. So why do it?
It's their fault.
Yeah, it's their fault for not applying. So, but we don't want to increase the inequality. So let's do something else to help the broader swath of people.
Does that still deplete the hoarding, or is that?
No, it doesn't.
Oh,
inaction doesn't deplete the hoarding at all.
Well, this is extraordinary. So
that's the counter argument
on the radio and the television saying you should apply for TANF benefits right now today because we have the money for you.
Okay, so that's number two, advertising. So one of the things we can do, like you said, is to go on the radio or TV and spend the money on advertising so people will apply for these benefits. And then somebody's probably going to say, what the heck are you doing that for? You're not helping poor people by spending lots of money on advertising and helping these media companies get rich. So okay, we won't do that then. We won't do that.
Okay.
So choices number one and number two are vetoed. Okay, we can't do those. So what's next? All right, maybe we can put some money into other types of programs that'll help the poor people, like give them dependent care, right? Give them some subsidized childcare so they can go to work and make money and dig themselves out of poverty. How does that sound?
Does that count for obligating these funds?
Yeah, I believe it does. Yeah, I mean, certain kinds of programs that you can run for the benefit of poor people do count. Okay. I'm not sure if that particular fact pattern is one of them, but I think it's close. So then somebody's going to say, well, that's fine, but we have a whole bunch of people. You see them on the side of the road. They're not working. How can we help them?
So it's choosing who we want to benefit. Then there's this kind of perseveration about not being able to make a decision. Is that political? What is that?
I think it is political. I'm not really sure if that is a legitimate political question, but you can see if I were a bureaucrat, I could see that being an issue. I mean, I don't want people to criticize me for how I deploy these funds. So I got to do something that helps everybody.
Well, and the result is that there's $378 million on the shelf being hoarded and not being used. Tom, right. I don't remember how this works, but if we keep on hoarding, do we lose the money from the Fed?
I'm not sure. I mean, the fact that it's built up so much indicates that the Feds haven't clawed anything back. But there are consequences for hoarding. Like when we were going through the pandemic, right? Our good representatives in Washington allotted close to $1 billion to the states in the American Rescue Plan Act. Okay. Hawaii pulled down $4.2 million from that. Now, the amount of money that each state got is based on a formula. And the formula gives more to states that spent their TANF money on benefits to low-income families with children.
There you go.
Okay, so if we had drawn down more of that $378 million, we would have got more of that $1 billion when the when the big problem came around.
Makes sense. Should work that way.
Yeah, and I think
it strikes me. Go ahead.
And I think it is, symptomatic of what happens in governments of all levels. They say, "Look, we're giving you money. You're not spending it. Why should we give you any more?"
Fair enough. But what is remarkable here is the fact that these bureaucrats, and I suppose if we worked hard and drilled down, we could name some of them, they're not spending it, and they're losing the benefit of it, and people who are poor are not receiving the benefit that was intended by the federal government. That's inexcusable, in my opinion.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the problem is, we have, people who are maybe well-meaning but paranoid about avoiding criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And
I wanted to ask you about criticism. You say, well, people would object if these bureaucrats spent money advertising the program and trying to encourage needy families to file applications for the money. Okay, I don't think that's a valid reason, but let's assume.
But I think it has happened before.
Oh yeah. So the question, though, is the flip side of that is the media. The media that doesn't charge to disseminate information about this program, like Think Tech. I mean, we talk about it, and I think we're being honest and candid about what is going on and what should go on. But what about the other media? There should be criticism here. Somebody should get up and do an op-ed piece, a commentary, a criticism of the state agencies involved for sitting on $378 million of money that could help needy families. I mean, where is that criticism? Why aren't the media pointing that out in order to put heat on these agencies? And furthermore, that doesn't cost anything. There's no advertising revenue involved in that. It's just old-fashioned news and criticism. What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's exactly what we're doing.
Yes, it is. But others should be doing it too. It should be a chorus of criticism from all media in the state, don't you think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. It's terrible. Meanwhile, the paper is full of all these reports about people who are unhappy and needy and starving and homeless and so forth, and the money's right there on the tree, to low hanging fruit, really.
Yeah, we just have to go pick it.
Yeah. Uh, so, what agencies are involved here? What agencies are sleeping at the stick?
Um, I think we're probably looking at the Department of Human Services.
I don't know why the governor doesn't come down like with hobnail boots on whoever is responsible. If you're running the Department of Human Services and you have all this money and you're not spending this money on the people it was intended for, you have no excuse. You have to go now. I'll accept your letter. But that doesn't happen.
Well, that probably won't happen. I mean, uh, I think Human Services budget is way bigger than the 378 million. So,
Oh, okay, yeah, let's put it in perspective. Maybe we have the wrong idea. Maybe 378 million is just a drop in the bucket. What is the total amount of money they have to give to needy families? And is $378 million a drop in the bucket?
well, let's take a look. Let's go back to our first slide for a second to see how much we're spending. So, TANF funds used in Hawaii. Let's go look at that slide. And we're spending, 160 million, 140 million of our own money. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, this 378 million is not a drop in the bucket. It seems to be a significant expenditure. And then let's see how the other states are doing. I have a chart called Top 10 TANF Hoarding States. And this kind of gives you an idea of how much the feds award and how much the unobligated balance is. And what I did is I ranked the states by the ratio of unobligated balance to the 2021 award. So it shows you the states that are not spending all of their federal funds and have quite a bit left. So Tennessee tops the list. They were on last year's call out too. Maine apparently got the message. They're not on this list anymore.
Mm.
We're number 2.
That's sandwiched between Tennessee, and I wouldn't want to be associated with Tennessee and Oklahoma, and I wouldn't want to be associated with them. We are really at the bottom of the heap with others who are at the bottom of the heap, and it doesn't speak much for our efficiency or our caring and concern for needy families or our respect for the federal distributions.
Yeah, the feds passed this program and they made it in block grants. I think on the understanding that the best way to spend the money would be best left to people who are nearer to the problem, namely the states. So that's I think why they did it that way. Mm-hmm. So we have to, I think, step up to the plate and say, all right, you've given us this money. We'll be good stewards of the money, and we'll use it to help the poor.
Well, let's take the governor out of the picture for a minute, although he really is in the picture. And let's say, well, he's busy with other things. He's got other fish to fry. And I find this interesting is, one of the fish he wants to fry is helping the homeless. But this would help the homeless. So you don't understand why he doesn't act on it. But let's talk about the legislature. The legislature, has a lot of bills that are questionable and a lot of issues like the bullying issue, that are very questionable about why they should be spending their time with such things. Has the legislature done anything to try to, enforce the rules about distributing money to needy families, or is the legislature also turning its back on this issue?
Well, last year, um, there was a law enacted that was Act 237 that permitted TANF funds to be used for more things, such as providing housing assistance subsidies. People have a problem with their rent payments. They can come, use this federal money. But again, you have to come and apply for it. I'm wondering if people actually know about it.
So, but that tells us some things here. It tells us that the state has the power to expand the definition of obligated funds. So just as it could, just as it did expand, the payments last year, it could expand them again this year and next year. It could make obligated funds much broader and easier for human services to distribute.
Yeah.
Am I right? It's
Yeah.
up to us. It's up to us to define what obligated funds are.
Yeah. But even if the legislature makes it easier, we still have to go out and do it.
Mm.
We gotta do something. We can't just sit at our desks and let the money pile up and pile up and pile up, which is what we have been doing. Okay. And I don't know. In fairness, we don't have the results for 2022 yet, and it may show that HHS is taking this seriously, and or DHS is the State Department. They're taking it seriously and spending the money, but we don't know what they did in 2022 yet. But we've got some red flags, and they're flying higher. So, based on the 2021 results, so I think it is worth bringing this matter up and putting it into the ears of our lawmakers. We hope so they can do something about this.
In a larger sense, whether it's the 160 million you mentioned or the 270, the state funds or the 278 million. The fact is we have a lot of poor people in this state. People who can't afford the rent, people who can't afford food. This is a very expensive state. We all know that. We've heard that message for our whole lives. Here in Hawaii, things are more expensive for various reasons. This is no small thing. When you think of people out there on the street, when you think of people who cannot feed their children, it takes on a moral overtone, doesn't it?
That plus, you go back to that first graph to see how much we pay versus how much the feds pay, and the more we want to take care of people on the street, we spend our own money for it, and by our own money, that means yours and mine. Okay. Governments don't pay taxes, taxpayers pay taxes. So they're basically coming back to those of us who can pay tax and say, okay, you need to shell out more because we need to take care of our homeless.
Well, let's assume for a minute that the federal money does go in the right place, and it is.
Well, some of it does, just not enough of it.
Yeah, well, let's assume that this hoarding amount goes in the right place too, and that we properly, efficiently spend the $378 million we've accumulated. That doesn't that mean, Tom, that we have additional funds available out of what we spend out of state money, state taxpayers, and that those funds could be used for other fiscal requirements, fiscal issues, fiscal necessities to run the state. In other words, because we're not spending the federal money and we have to spend the state money instead to deal with needy families, the result is we have less money to run the state. Am I right?
Yeah. And of course they make up for it by raising our taxes.
Well, that makes it just doubly bad.
Yeah, exactly. So a number of years ago, when Jill Tokuda was Ways and Means chair in the Senate, she had a number of hearings directed at precisely this issue. Money that was being built up and not used. There were several agencies that were the subject of these hearings. There was, our Department of Transportation had some block grants that were, building up and building up, but I think they got the message and they started spending that down. Board of Water Supply had a bunch of money being built up, but I think they got the message. The Department of Hawaiian Homelands had Native Hawaiian block grants, and they weren't spending it down. That problem still persists. We've identified that in coverage earlier this session, and we have brought it up before. Department of Education has lots of money available to help with mental health issues for students if they just applied for it, but they don't, leaving a lot of federal money on the table there too.
If you make that analysis, if you look across the economic environment of the state that way, it seems to me that the Native Hawaiians are getting the short shrift because a lot of them need the money. A lot of them would be the recipients of at least some, maybe a substantial part of this money, and they're not getting it, and that makes it kind of racial, doesn't it? That there's so many people, so many Native Hawaiians who could get money because they need the money, or they were intended legislatively to get the money, aren't getting the money. And I don't hear the complaints from, OHA or any other Native Hawaiian organization coming out and saying, wait a minute, you guys are discriminating against us by not distributing the money to people who are clearly in need of it and who were the intended recipients. Am I right about that?
Well, I mean, it depends on the issue. They all sorts of other excuses can come up, like when the issue for DHHL came up. They said, "Oh, we have all these permitting log jams, so even if we wanted to spend the money, we couldn't. I mean, we can plan stuff, but when we go in for permit, it takes years and more years, and they do have a point. I don't know if it explains all of the logjam, but it certainly explains some of it. Yeah. And there are many places in government where we've got inefficiency, and we've got delays, and we got to do something about it.
Yeah, and instead of just laying it on the taxpayer to make up the shortfall that's created by the failure of the state government to actually spend the money it has, I find that extraordinary. So, okay, I'm giving you free time now, Tom. This is your opportunity to speak to the public and speak to state government, and there will be no charge for the advertising. This is free advertising. Let's see if you can reach some people. This is the part where you get to, try to change the way things work.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of Hawaii, we have a problem. The problem is that the federal government has given us lots of money that we haven't spent. And there are, excuses after excuses for why our bureaucrats haven't spent the money. But we need to cut through all of those. Obviously, what's going to happen if that money stays unspent is we still have needs. The state government's going to come to, you and me, the taxpayer, to make up for anything that they haven't done correctly. So we need to make sure that our state government is efficient, that we're doing that they're doing what we expect of them, that they're doing what the feds expect of them, and our funding especially, so we don't have to do it ourselves. So come on, folks, let's make sure that our bureaucrats and our legislators know that this issue is out there and that they're doing something about it.
Yeah, so there's two things. One is they can apply. They can apply for the TANF grants. And the second thing is they can make old-fashioned stink about the fact that the state is not properly administrating these funds. Tom Yamachika, president of the Tax Foundation of Hawaii, joining me in our regular gadfly discussion. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks for having me on the show, Jay.
Aloha.
Thank you so much for watching Think Tech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.